Hi there. So, color palettes. Color palettes are particularly important in textile design. They're important in fashion design too, and in all forms of art. But in textile design, because of the limitations of certain types of textile design, right? So, um, there we go. We have uh, different types of textile design or of printing that you'll remember from the lecture, What is Textile Design? And these each allow for different numbers of colors. So if you limit your textile designs in colors, you'll have more options for the ways that you can screen print or apply your pattern to fabrics. If you design something that has millions of colors, like something that uses gradients and all this kind of crazy stuff, your only option is going to be to print it. So if it ever wants to be scaled to larger applications, then you would never be able to do that with screen printing, which is cheaper in the long run. So hopefully that makes sense. The color palette is just a way of displaying the colors that you are going to be using, and so we are going to actually add them to first to our mood board. So I just like finished up the mood board from the last project or the last video, and we are going to add colors, I think, to this little section behind this house and um, lighthouse or mill or whatever this building is, this round building. And we are going to do it by first picking out colors using the eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool allows you to select colors from the image itself. Okay, so if we select it, we want to make sure that it's sampling all the layers so that you, like wherever you click, you're just getting the color that you see. And we're going to start adding some colors. So I know that I definitely want some of these reds in here. And remember, we want you to only use 8 colors across all of your projects. I believe it's 8. Double check the assignment, but I think it's 8. So we will add only 8 different colors here. So before we add them to the mood board, let's figure it out in here. And there's always flexibility later on if you decide one of these colors isn't right. You know, there's total flexibility for you to switch it out. But for your initial mood board, you should, try to get an idea of the color palette that you want on there. Okay? So let's actually make a new folder in here, and we'll call this cottagecore. And there's nothing in this folder right now. And I'm going to actually select all of these and hit the trash because I don't need those. And now we have the eyedropper tool out. We have selected the color, and you can see it's showing up right there. And so as long as it's in your foreground color, you can hit plus. We could have named the swatch if we wanted to, and it shows up right here, and I'm clicking and dragging to drag it into cottagecore. So there it is. So let's pick out a few more colors. This is a nice warm brown. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can do 7. I want this like lighter red, but that's maybe going to be too close to that other red that I have. Is that too close? Maybe. And what? Maybe a lighter green, kind of a chartreusey, grassy green. Alright, so I'm going to select all of these, and I just held shift, and now they're all in cottagecore, and there's 8 of them. Alright, so let's put them on the page, and then what we're eventually going to do is learn how to save these so that we can bring them over to Illustrator really easily, so we won't have to then pick colors again in Illustrator. But let's add them to this page first. I'm going to use my layers panel and make a new layer. And I want them to go underneath. If any of the colors overlap here, I want them to go underneath. I'm still trying to decide how am I going to fill this. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is actually just draw a rectangle and just fill it with one color. So we're going to learn a couple new tools here. I've got my rectangle marquee tool. We learned that in the last video. But we're going to use the fill tool now. Here it is. Underneath the gradient tool, we have the paint bucket tool. And the paint bucket tool will fill the whole canvas. If your canvas is empty, it will fill up to an image if there's an image on a canvas, or if you have something selected, it will just fill what you have selected. So I'm just going to fill this with one of my colors. I want to fill it with the lightest color right now. Beautiful. And I'm actually going to deselect. And I'm thinking I'm just going to cut that up into 8 different little squares. But I think that I should do it, I'll actually delete it and I'll just do it one square at a time. Yeah, so I'm just going to estimate the little square for the moment. So we'll do that and we'll hit delete. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this square actually, so we can duplicate the layer 8 times. There's all sorts of different ways we can add color. We could have done it all on one layer. That would have worked just fine. But I think having the flexibility of having a bunch of layers will be good. I'm holding shift and I'm going to move it over all at once. And with smart guides on, it's kind of helping me to make things equal. So I'm actually now going to select all of them. I'm actually holding Alt and clicking and dragging, which is helping me keep things even. Okay, so things got a little bit haywire here. I mean, there's just a few more than I intended to, but I'm just going to select all of them and merge them back into one layer. So I'm clicking on the options up at the top of the panel page and choosing merge layers, and then we're going to hit Control T or edit transform. and oops, darn it, I'm gonna hit Control Z. I accidentally merged it with another image. Oh, I see. I accidentally duplicated that image. All right. This is what history is good for. We can go back in time. There we go. And we have this extra layer there we can delete. It's just deleting them all because they were all selected still. We just needed to deselect and then select that one only in the layers panel. Okay. Now these should only be the squares. Merge layers, going to the layer options, merge layers. So now they're all one. And we can drag them in. I accidentally moved this classic. All right, so Control T to transform. I have my little things selected, and then I'm actually going to hold Shift so that it doesn't make them thinner. It just leaves them the same height, but only made them thinner in the width, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So there we go. And now we can fill with color. So we're going to grab that paint bucket tool again, open up our swatches panel, and we should be able to just click through all of these really directly. Make sure we're on the right layer. Yeah, so we just cycle through all of these colors, fill these all in. Because I merged them all back onto one layer, it's really nicely allowing me to fill these without having to switch layers, because that can be a hassle. And we'll see if this pink makes it into the final cut. We can always adjust that to be a different color, a different yellow or something like that later on. But I think these look beautiful. It's great when they're all the same size. You don't have to make yours square though. We could have drawn little circles, right? And filled the little circles each with color. Could have done something like this. Copied and pasted those. But I think the squares look good for this kind of square layout. You can do any shape as long as your colors are on there somehow. And in your final version of your mood board, you can always come back and change the colors to the colors that you actually used in your prints, right? The mood boards can be a little bit of a living document. It's nice to get your ideas out ahead of time and be clear about your goals, but then also things can adapt. Beautiful. All right. So we're going to bring these colors over into Illustrator, and we're going to learn how to do the same thing, bring colors back into Photoshop from Illustrator. So if we select this folder, we should be able to go up here and choose Export Swatches for Exchange. If you just choose Export Selected Swatches, you'll only be able to bring it back into Photoshop, but Export Swatches for Exchange allows you to bring them into Illustrator. So Export Swatches for Exchange, and we are going to save as an ASE. That's the correct type of file for Exchange, and we want to save them. I like to save them somewhere I have access, like I know where they are, where they're going to be. So I'm going to save them in kind of what's become my junk folder lately. and we will call these cottage core swatches, and hit save. And then we're going to move over to Adobe Illustrator, right? The sister program of Adobe Photoshop. And we are just going to hit create new for now, and we'll just create any documents. And we're going to find our swatches panel in Illustrator now and import the swatches. Slow computer today. There we go. So I have my swatches panel right here, up in the corner. I'm going to try Open Swatch Library, Other Library. Okay, I think you can access this same thing down here. So we go down here, we can choose Other Library. Okay, that pile of books is a way for you to access any kind of libraries that you've defined before. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a second. And let me find that junk folder, and we're looking for ASE. Yeah, Cottage Core Swatches ASE. And there they are, the beautiful swatches. Yeah, so you can then, make any shapes that you want in here and apply these colors to them, right? And you can make your patterns using those colors. So that's a great way to handle the file exchange. So let's say I want to bring some of these colors back into Photoshop. Like we can make a new folder in our swatches. We can add a bunch of colors to it. Maybe we've come up with some custom colors. And we want to get those back to Photoshop in order to be able to update the colors that we used or whatever. We can hit Add New Swatch. We can add it to this folder. Things aren't working for me today in terms of clicking and dragging. I wonder if it's my mouse. I think I should just be able to do that, but oh well. We can select it and then choose a color group. Okay, and then it added it to the color group. I'm not sure why it's not letting me drag them in. I feel like I have been able to do that in the past. So experiment with that. But we can export any swatches we have selected coming up and choosing Save Swatch Library as ASE. If you save the Swatch Library as Adobe Illustrator, you'll only be able to open it again in Adobe Illustrator. ASE can open up in a couple different Adobe programs at least. So save it as that. We can save it where we know, and then it's basically saying that things like your patterns and gradients, those won't be visible in Photoshop, right? So you can't export your patterns this way. We'll talk about ways that you can export your patterns eventually, but maybe later on. We can hit OK, and then back in Photoshop we can choose Import Swatches. And we have to tell it we're looking for ASE. And there is that one. Right? Oh, that exported the whole, all of the swatches I made in the document. But here is the one that we needed. Yeah, so I guess it would have been better in Illustrator to delete any of the colors that we weren't interested in first, and only add those colors that we were interested in, right? Yeah, and then these colors could have been added back into Photoshop and it would have been more direct. We wouldn't have had all of these extra colors that showed up. I'm actually going to delete this. Yeah, so that's the most straightforward way to do it if you don't have the Adobe Creative Cloud library. If you're getting your subscription through MassArt, you won't have access to this library, but you can save colors here and then open them up again directly in Illustrator through the library. We just have to make sure we've chosen the same library, and these are saved on the Adobe Cloud, which you may or may not have access to. So that earlier way was how to do it with no access, and this way is how you can do it with access. Yeah, so we could add colors here and they would be instantly available in Photoshop as long as we've chosen the correct library here. Yep, so there it is. So that's like my favorite way to do it, but if you don't have access to the Creative Cloud library, you won't be able to do it that way. So there's other ways to do it though. It's totally fine. All right, so I think that that's everything we need to talk about in terms of color palettes. So I'll be excited to see your mood boards and the color palettes you come up with, but be sure to get those color palettes on those mood boards. It's a requirement in fashion design for this class for you to have the color palettes on there. All right, bye.